is the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta last year finished with a 36-46 record. Their offensive rating, they finished 12th in offensive rating, 27th in defensive rating. So we're going to dive straight into Atlanta. Okay, here we go. We're going to talk about their contract situation first. So the Atlanta Hawks as a team, they're under the first apron by about $5 million. They're also under the second apron by about $16 million. Players with 1 year left on their contract is Clint Capella, Larry Nance Jr., Jalen Johnson will be a restricted free agent next summer. And then Garrison Matthews has 1 year left on his deal. And obviously the biggest dominoes, the biggest trade chip they got is Trae Young. He has 2 years left on his deal with the third year being a player option. So obviously something to be kind of monitoring. Obviously Trae Young, I know they were trying to trade him over the summer. I know he was kind of not happy being there and whatnot. So that's obviously something to monitor as he's literally going into another iteration of this team, just to see how how that goes with that. Okay, so rookie expectations for the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, they had the number 1 pick. They drafted Zachary Richiche from France, 6'9", forward. And what I expect out of him this upcoming year, in my opinion, is he'll probably be a role player. I don't expect him to start necessarily. Maybe at some point, he'll get starter minutes, or he'll start. Maybe he will start opening night. I don't know. But from him, expectations for him is honestly just showing the NBA world his offensive and defensive versatility. I think both sides. I think he's pretty versatile. Doesn't mean he's good. Obviously, we all know in other year drafts he wouldn't be the first pick. I don't expect him to be the franchise player, nothing crazy like that. But I do expect throughout this NBA season for him to show the NBA world and NBA fans like, hey, I can do stuff offensively and defensively, because I watched him do it over in France last season. So I expect that to be the same this year. So yeah, that's my floor, and that's what my opinion is about him. So I want to talk about the team's floor and the team's ceiling. So for me, the floor for the team is the lottery. I think that's pretty obvious. And by the lottery, obviously, we all know lottery picks is 1 through 15. So again, in that range. Obviously, I don't think they can get the first pick again. Honestly, don't even think they'll be top 5. If anything, Atlanta probably land between 10 and 15, And then also I think their ceiling is a first-round series. And that's if, obviously, things fall a certain way. If Richiche, hits and he's, better than expected. If Jalen Johnson takes that next leap, which I'm getting ready to talk more about Jalen Johnson. And, yeah, that's all. If all things go well for them, that ends up happening for the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, so now I want to talk about kind of just my opinion on the Atlanta Hawks. So I do believe that this Atlanta Hawks team has an opportunity, and doesn't mean it's going to happen. But again, I'm just putting it out there because I think it's something that potentially could happen. I think there's potential behind it. Like I said, I'm not putting my feet to it, but I'm just saying it's something to keep out for. I think this Atlanta Hawk team potentially could be the best defensive team Trae Young's ever had. Simply because if you look at who's on the team now, a little bit more bigger. They got bigger wings. Obviously, they have Jalen Johnson. I think he's a pretty solid defender. They got Dyson Daniels. He's a plus defender. Richiche, you guys will see, he's a plus defender. They have bigger defenders around him now. Bigger wings are going to be around Trae Young. And not to say DeJounte Murray. Obviously, we know DeJounte Murray was a good defender. But I just think there's bigger wings around him now, and I think that may benefit them defensively. I think they may be better defensively because in years past with Atlanta, they didn't really finish that high in defense. Their best defensive year with Trae Young was they finished 21st in defensive rating, and that was that same year that Nate McMillan took over. Like I think about halfway through the season he took over. So I think Atlanta literally has a chance, to be better than that. Because last year alone, they finished 27th. Okay, they finished 27th, and I think they're good enough to go up 7 spots defensively. And that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Could be right. We'll see. I think they do have an opportunity, though, to be better than 21st defensively with their personnel this upcoming season. Players to keep your eyes on. I kind of just named them a little bit. My guy Jalen Johnson from Duke. Like I told you guys, I am a Duke Blue Devils basketball fan. And before the college basketball season start, I'll let you guys know like where that whole Duke love comes from, because there's a backstory to it, a personal one. So before the college basketball season start, I'll go into that deep dive. And obviously, as you can see, I got the Bama on. I'm an Alabama Crimson Tide football fan. I've been a big fan of theirs for over 15 years. Like that's my team. We just killed the little team this past weekend. But anyways, that's besides the point. So Jalen Johnson, I think he has opportunity to take a year 3 leap. Last year, I even called it last summer. I told my brother, I was like, hey, I think Jalen Johnson's probably going to take a leap this year. He did that. I think this year 3, he's going to have another opportunity to take another leap. And the reason why he went, so when he got drafted, I already felt when he got drafted, I thought Atlanta had a steal right off rip because Jalen Johnson beforehand, I believe, was the number 1 rated high school kid in his class. I think he was number 1 if I remember correctly, or like top 3, top 4, or whatever in high school class. He went to Duke, and at Duke he performed well to me. He was really, to me, and I'm not saying he's this player at all, but he had glimpses of like a Ben Simmons to me, and I felt that way when I watched him at Duke. I was like, bro, this dude's nice with it, you know. But yeah, so he slips in the draft to Atlanta. Atlanta snagged him up. I think it was because he was dealing with injuries at Duke. So I think that's why his draft stock fell. And even in the NBA, he dealt with a little bit of injuries. His rookie year, he only played 22 games. 2 years ago, he played 70 games. And then this last year, he only played 56 games. Excuse me. Played 56 games this last year. But his minutes increased this last year. He played 34 minutes a game this last year. So I'm hoping that's not... I'm hoping the minute increase is not why we saw the reduction, you know, in his game. But that's somebody to keep your eyes out on. Obviously, they got rid of DeJounte Murray, so there's going to be shot opportunities. I do expect Jalen Johnson's shots to increase by 3 to 4. So he's probably going to be close to, if not over 20 points a game, you know. Like, I feel pretty confident saying he's probably going to be at 20, if not more, if he's getting that many more shot attempts. And I think he'll probably have the ball in his hands a little bit more. Maybe they'll try and have Trae Young off ball a little bit more and use Jalen Johnson as a hub, you know. I would like to see that more for them personally. Another player I want to say that they, you know, to kind of keep your eyes out on is Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels obviously played for the New Orleans Pelicans, and he was a role player, but he showed a lot of glimpses, a lot of promise to me defensively. And I think he's going to be a big part of Atlanta's defense this year. I expect him to get big minutes. He's probably going to play about close to 30 minutes a game for Atlanta, I'm assuming, 25 to 30 minutes. And I'm just excited to watch what he brings to Atlanta. I think in Atlanta he's going to have a larger role than what he had in New Orleans. Obviously, New Orleans, he was, you know, behind some very talented players, and Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, you know, he was behind those guys. So I don't feel like he really had an opportunity really to show what he's about. But Atlanta's a new place. I think he's going to show his defensive versatility and what he really can do on that end of the floor. I think that's where he's really going to make his money. So that's a player I'm looking out to be watching for on the team. Obviously, I kind of just named the last player. Well, just talked about him earlier, Trae Young. This potentially could be his last year in Atlanta. You know, we'll see how everything goes. We'll see if any team is willing to pick him up. You know, I heard his draft stock is not that high right now. I mean, his trade value is not that high right now. So we'll see what happens with Trae Young. I want to talk about also their draft capital. So Atlanta's draft capital, 2025 is owed to the Spurs. They have the Lakers pick in 25, and then they have Sacramento's pick. If it falls 13 to 30, they get that in 25. 26, the Spurs have the right to swap with them in 26. They get Sacramento's pick. If it hasn't already been conveyed in 25, they get it in 26. It's 11 to 30th. 11 to 30th goes to Atlanta if it's not conveyed in 25. 27 goes to the Spurs. And they get the least favorable of Milwaukee and New Orleans if either is 5 to 30. So really weird stipulations on that one on 27. And then 28 to 31, they have their own picks. So that's the Atlanta Hawks. And I want to take this time to let you guys know, if you Atlanta fans, if you feel like I missed out on something, or you feel like I could have talked more about something, or there was something you want to debate with me about, you know, let me know in the comments down below, my Atlanta Hawk fans, okay? So that's Atlanta.